Coogs House, The Guardian is out there saying that there are no great programs or teams left in college basketball. Spoiler alert, they're wrong.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, to break down all things Cougs. If you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, and it is March, so I think some of you are out there, please be sure to subscribe. Download that we listen to Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. Appreciate you making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. And if you found us on YouTube, it is great to see you again. Remember to subscribe. We're doing a giveaway every 500 subscribers. Next one of those is 2,500. We're at about 2,100, almost over 2,100 at the time of recording this. So hit subscribe, like and comment on the video. Let us know you're in that contest. If you don't know what to say after today's jumbled up kind of one thing to the other episode, tell us, as is pertinent in the Ainsworth household this evening, have you ever had an allergic reaction to something? All right, so today's episode is going to be looking at this article out there about college basketball, but there are no great teams. We'll talk more about that in a second. Then I want to talk about some NIL news. It looks like Monday was a rest day filled with NIL publications and commercials and things like that for these Cougars. But big-time deals signed. I got some hypotheses as well. And then last but not least, next year's Houston Cougar March Madness run will look different because some of the players will look different. There's some weird movement in who those players might be. A little early on some of that, a little late on some of that. That'll all make sense when we get there. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We'll tell you more about that later. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Place to be right now. All right, let's talk about this Guardian article. Now, Thomas Hauser writes it, and it is well written. He is a talented writer. He covers boxing for The Guardian more often than not. But in this instance, his article for The Guardian is just wrong. The article is titled that there are no more great, will there ever be another great team in men's college basketball? And it goes on to say that part of this is a bunch of things like NILs and transfers and all the buzzword topics, one and dones and all those kinds of things, and talks, go back to like the avalanche of guys that went from high school to the pros and the Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, LeBron James window there. Kind of those two guys, obviously, Kobe and LeBron being like the big name bookends. I guess Garnett technically goes first and Dwight Howard technically goes last, but you see what I mean when you see that, like that window of high school talent had a lot of guys go straight to the league. And he mentions all that to say that, like, there are teams that are competitive and fun and basketball is fun or whatever. But there are no more great teams. And he tags that the top three this year, UConn, Houston, and Purdue, in that order that as it currently stands. He points out that they have the most likely capability to kind of showcase what that would look like. They've got guys that have been around for a while, guys that have been in college for a long time, And I want to just disagree on a bunch of different things. But I think the first thing I want to disagree with him on is Houston is living its great team, its great program. The program of yesteryear that he talks about, yes, Houston has basketball history, the most Final Fours in the state of Texas that produces so much high school basketball talent. If you look across the NBA and high major college basketball and so on, right? I don't mean to say that the history isn't good, but there's a darn good argument to say that depending on how this year and next year and the year after goes, these first couple years in the Big 12, that you're living in what might be the best part of it. Now, obviously, it's hard to compete with the three Final Fours of the 80s and Phi Slamma Jamma. But if you look at the year before Clyde Drexler got there, or the year after they all left for the NBA, you're looking at teams that missed the tournament. And this Houston run that they're currently on does not start like that. It's a much more progressive buildup, and thus the trajectory as it stands feels far more sustainable. you look at what Houston's got going right now in terms of recruiting. They've got high-end prospects, Chase McCarty and Mercy Miller coming in next year. They've got offers in on a bunch of high-end kids in the 2025 class. 2026, I already know the guy I want them to go get for sure is Keontae Gray-Bear, the DFW Metroplex. Great story, great kid, phenomenal basketball player. Look that one up. Give you that one for free. If they can land him, that'd be huge. All signs point to this thing never slowing down. And I don't mean to say never because everything comes to an end at some point, but this is not a 3-year window of excellence. This is not you nailed it on 2 or 3 recruits and they stuck around for a while. This is none of that. This is development. It is coaching. It is opportunity, like joining the Big 12, and it's seizing all of that. And again, the wheels just keep spinning. This thing doesn't get worse. If anything, look at next year. You probably lose a couple guys to pros, but still a lot be another year further developed. Jacob McFarland coming off his red shirt. I mentioned Mercy. I mentioned Chase. We haven't even talked about a transfer portal kid. Maybe some of that later in the episode. But you also have Terrence Arsenal coming back from injury. I'd imagine Emmanuel Sharp is back. I don't think he's a pro next year. Maybe after that, but I don't think he's a pro next year. I see a bunch of turnover in this roster. JoJo Tugler, obviously, sticking around. The turnover in the third of the roster, plus the continuity of the guys they've got. This team only gets better next year. They won the Big 12 by 2 games in the regular season this year, and they only get better next year. No great teams, bogus. This team is a great team. This program is a great program. And citing older iterations of it that were not flash in the pan necessarily, but very dependent on a couple key cogs, and then not talking about this one as if it's great, feels horribly, horribly misguided. Now, yes, the run of Sweet 16s in a row is not the same as 3 Final Fours in a row, right? I get it. I get it. But I don't think it's like they're miles and miles apart. I also think it's worth pointing out that this run of Sweet 16s and farther has a Final Four. We haven't seen where this year's team or next year's team goes. And I feel like this thing, again, is not slowing down. I could also talk with some about how the truth is that the great teams have become the non-traditional great teams, right? You had FAU and Miami in the Final Four last year. I thought both those teams were really, really good. San Diego State, Final Four last year. I thought that team was really, really good. You've had Gonzaga make runs. They weren't the blue blood program that Thomas Hauser's talking about, right? I think that, and I think Houston could knock them off this year, but UConn has won 5 titles since '99. I think it's worth pointing out that feels like a pretty great team as well. I just think this article somewhat degrading the current state of college basketball because it's new and different is just horribly short-sighted and wrong. And I took personal offense to it as a Houston person, right? The Cougar program is strong. The current team is strong. And I think in 50, 60 years, those of us or you that are still here will be talking about how great that stretch of basketball was, the same way we talk about Elvin Hayes in the 60s knocking off Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor, right? And I don't understand the need to criticize the current because it's not the old, right? That just seems silly, right? That's like saying, in the 90s and the Fab Five and the long shorts, I can't believe they went to the just silly stuff. Yes, things are different now, right? I don't think that we can have to be so crazy as to judge the quality based on some arbitrary differences that do or don't rub us the wrong way. Anyway, soapbox over, high horse over. I just read the article and thought about Houston. And again, Hauser's a good writer. It's a well-written article. I just think it's wrong. Now, there's one thing I don't think is wrong, and that is this NIL thing that the basketball program is going with, Landon Gosling. So we'll talk more about that in a second and get a little bit into some fun stuff going on with that, and honestly some hypothetical stuff that I want to pose. But in the meantime, it is time for adventures. It is March, and this week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, picking one team that stands out, a team that has pushed it farther than the rest, just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These guys are able to make it to the next level, and that is this week's Auburn Tigers. They can only be described as a pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch and have really created a lane for themselves after claiming the top spot in the SEC as they knocked out the Florida Gators in the SEC Tournament Championship. They are set to make a run in the NCAA tournament. They're in a tough quadrant. They got 4 other Power 6 tournament champions in that quadrant. But man, oh man, the Tigers are fun to watch. I'm glad they're not in our quadrant, our region. Now take the Nissan Rogue, Pathfinder, Armada, and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Now, we can talk a lot about the tournament, but if you're going to be watching the tournament, there's only one place to watch, and your destination for sports is the Fire TV. Now, Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV, whether it's opening weekend for baseball, college basketball tournament, or you're going to want to have, or more, you're going to want to have a Fire TV or Fire TV stick. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues as well. Yes, you can find college conferences as well as Locked On all in the same spot on your Fire TV. Fire TV channels let you dive into the in-game analysis, highlights, and more. Keep up to date with all the latest world of sports from March Madness, the NBA, to MLB, not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on the Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. Again, basketball is always on my TV, and that's happening right there via Fire TV. Trust me on this. Learn more. Visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, so I guess really we can go back to Sunday. On Sunday, Drake, the rapper, crashed the party when it was announced that Houston would be the second number one seed. I could want to say overall in the March Madness NCAA tournament. Exciting, thrilling moment. Jamal Shed and Tillman Fertitta handed him it's the retro version they're wearing this year. It's the Jumpman and all that, but a 24 Drake jersey in that cut. Drake has been at Rockets games the last week or more with Fertitta. I think there seems to be a budding business partnership coming there in some form or fashion. But in that photo shoot with Drake, it did come out that this was an NIL party. There was NIL themes and parts of the conversation thing off camera in those in that party. Selection Sunday was all about stemming or building NIL relationships. And then on Monday, it became very apparent with a bunch of NIL ads being produced for a handful of different guys, or coming out for a couple of different guys on a day that seems like they didn't have as much team practice. Guys still getting there, getting shots up, guys still there, get treatment, guys still getting film, obviously, but need to take a little bit of a break. For instance, you had Jamal Shed posting about his sign with Mizzen Main, I want to say performance dress clothes company. That's what you'd call it too? So what it is, it's like performance fabrics, dress clothing cut. Clever ad for Jamal about wanting to be a professional and its professional look and feel good, look good, play good, and all those kinds of things. But so Jamal gets that deal. That's a fairly formal company, not even a Houston-based necessarily, I don't believe. The funniest one of these was that's what you were on the outside. Mizzen and Main, Jamal Shed, and teammate LJ Cryer signed with Kim Kardashian Skims. Yes, Skims, the undergarment brand from Kim Kardashian, has also launched a men's line. And it sounds like LJ Cryer and Jamal should be amongst a bunch of college athletes with that NIL deal. You go back into the weekend a little bit early, had Tempur-Pedic mattresses with Mattress Mac and all kinds of other fun things. Now, shout out to Landon Gosling and Linking Coogs, amongst other NIL collectives surrounding the Houston Cougars, for getting these kinds of things done. Gosling has proven to be a deal closer. Lots of things, whether it's Exxon and Jamal or all kinds of things being circled around this basketball program. But I want to do a countdown of 5 companies with Houston ties, City of Houston ties, should say, much like Mattress Mac and Gallery Furniture, City of Houston ties that should be next. Number 5, BitWallet. BitWallet cryptocurrency sparked that single-year Final Four run in Miami. As crypto went down, so did their basketball program. Houston's is much more stable than that, but there seems to be money bouncing back into that market. And BitWallet is a startup based in Houston to keep track of all of your cryptocurrency things. I think it's a way to get into the tech industry game. It's also, frankly, not a hard thing to believe that a college kid could sell you on. It's the way of the future. This is the future of the Big 12, Houston, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's fairly easy. Again, it's a brand-based startup company based in Houston. Second, Fiesta Mart. I guess countdown from be fourth, but Fiesta Mart. Fiesta Mart is, again, based originally in Houston, large grocery stores. You can make some jokes about college kids and some for groceries and all the kinds of like different options they have, and then they go to the local, I don't know, HEB kind of stuff, whatever. They can go to Fiesta Mart and get something different to spice it up or whatever, change things up. Get Alan Bishop involved in some aspect of it too, about like the nutritional, like, and like the you are what you eat kind of mentality. He brings the things you got to eat like a big time athlete to be a big time athlete, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Number 3, Imperial Sugar. Now, I'm not advocating the guys have more sugar than Alan Bishop recommends them having, but Imperial Sugar is a brand started in Houston. Feels like very natural connection. The sweet feeling of cutting down nets or something to that effect. And then whatever clips you want to say, whatever players cutting it down. I think there's something there. I think there's also money there, and it's a Houston-based company. Speaking of Houston-based companies, number 2, Men's Warehouse. Now, I have to say, this is me piggybacking off of Jamal signing with Mizzen and Maine a little bit, but I do think Men's Warehouse is the everyday person's way to get dressed up for a formal occasion. You're going to look good. You can rent tuxedos and suits. You can buy things. Like, it's a lot of different options for the consumer there. It's a, frankly, thing that we used at my wedding and many weddings I've been to. But also, Houston-based company, college kids. You can talk about, again, back to Bishop and like the changing body sizes, the unique, like crazy wingspans of Javier Francis and needing to have like very specific tailor cuts and it being hard to find, right? Things can write themselves on that one. Men's Warehouse would be a great NIL option for the Houston basketball program. And number 1, I'm going to give you a list of things to pick from here because they need another local restaurant that's not a direct competitor with Star Pizza, but somebody that represents something else. And there's a bunch of Houston restaurants to recommend. I think Ninfa's and the original fajitas is a key there, a key selling point. You have the original basketball program of Houston or something like that. Houston's own basketball program, Houston's own fajitas. There's something there. Good company. I mean, it's good company. Houston Cougars are good. That writes itself. Shipley's Donuts. I think there's a way to add, like dunking a donut into coffee and dunking a basketball or, using the rim and a donut. Like there's all kinds of things there. Shipley's Donuts, obviously. And then Frenchie's for chicken. I mean, it's right there across the street, folks. Right? Like that's just figure something out. Each of these Houston-based restaurants and restaurant chains or food chains, I think one of them's going to happen. I think that the fun one would be Ninfa's. But I could see any of them working. I think that's the next route that this thing goes. But again, Bitwallet, Fiesta Mart, Imperial Sugar, Men's Warehouse are some different food or restaurant chain of my picks. If you're going to pick, tell me in the comments down below. Now, Jamal Shed is kind of headlining a lot of Houston's NIL programs. He's the face of the program right now, right? But I will say that feels like that face may change. He may be getting paid by an NBA franchise or somebody to play in the near future. We'll see, I guess. But in the meantime, before we get into talking some about who else could be wearing that Houston Cougar uniform, be the next face of the program, I want to talk a little bit about FanDuel, because at FanDuel you can say goodbye to those busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament, whether you're betting on big upsets or a one seed. It's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Put $5 on Houston this Friday night. Watch that thing win. 200 in bonus bets back in your account right away. It's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Right now, the Houston Cougars are at plus 600 to win it all on FanDuel. America's #1 sportsbook. Go to FanDuel.com/locked on. Bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, last but not least here, as we have some time here between games, getting ready to go watch them play in Memphis on Friday. Still working out if we can pull it off on my end or not. But Houston plays in Memphis Friday night against the Longwood Lancers. Yes, it's a real place and name, but they're actually pretty talented. And I've done a little watching on them. More preview of them throughout the week. But we mentioned Jamal Shed may end up in the NBA very, very soon, may end up playing pro basketball. He's the face of the program right now. And I think a lot of people are wondering who's going to be calling the shots. Who is that next point guard for Houston going to be? And I think people have eyes on the transfer portal. The kid my eyes are on right now is Jordan Ivy Curry. He's the point guard at UTSA. He is from just outside Galveston, and that dude can fill it up. High volume score. He gets it to in a bunch of different ways off the pick and roll. He gets to the rack. He pulls up in the mid range. He hits threes off the dribble. He isn't the biggest guy, listed at 5'10" and change. But again, Jamal is a little bit bigger than that, not a whole lot bigger. I will say that we've seen short point guards dominate this conference, whether it was TJ Ford, one of Houston's own that we like it out, or Kansas State last year, or whomever, right? Short point guards can dominate the Big 12 conference in a way that I'm not super worried about the size necessarily. I'm more intrigued by the fact that he had 38 points against Florida Atlantic, team that tournament team this year, Final Four team last year, returned their roster and coach for the most part, and he gave them 38 at UTSA. He's got, I believe, 2 years left of eligibility. I think he could come in, you can develop him as well, but then your younger guards and have a nice, easy, smooth transition. We'll see how that goes, but he's a guy I got my eye on to see where he ends up. He didn't have a Houston offer to high school, but again, he was a much different recruit then. He ended up at UTSA, and I was looking to get a little bit more big time. What better place to go big time? Similarly, not similarly, kind of inversely, actually, Brandon Garrison, 6'11", from Del City, Oklahoma, at Oklahoma State, with the firing of head coach Boynton at Oklahoma State. And for the record, it looks like people want them to hire Gottlieb. Don't hire Doug Gottlieb. Don't hire Doug Gottlieb. Actually, as a Houston fan, I should really ask you to hire Doug Gottlieb. It only work. Back up. Hire Doug Gottlieb at Oklahoma State. That would help us out. But Brandon Garrison has grown in his year at Oklahoma State from 6'9" in high school to 6'11" listed, which means he was probably 6'9" and change, probably 6'10" and change now. But big, strong kid. Houston was in his top 4 when he was picking schools on 2 different recruiting websites. He did not post top 4 on his social media in the same way some people do. He was McDonald's All-American, true big man. And having not seen Jacob McFarland on the court yet, he was a lot more polished than several big men on Houston's roster, depending on who stays and who goes next year. Now, Jaywan does have the COVID year if he wants it. I believe I saw that correctly. And so technically, he doesn't have to go. Right now, with that said, there are some people assuming he will, some people assuming he won't. But you'd have he, Francis, Tugler all back, Lott back, McFarland in the mix. This Brandon Garrison is not as polished from his post moves perspective as Jaywan Roberts. But outside of that, I think he'd have probably the best isolation game of any post on the roster. He's still very young, still has a long time left in college. And I don't know why you wouldn't take the kid. Now, from a roster space perspective, you might just not have enough space, I guess. But you clearly had a connection before. I think you can continue to build that. And the guy that sparked this conversation for me, this guy I remember coaching against in high school when he was at school in Texas. He transferred to Montverde. He's one of the big three on that Montverde team right now with Cooper Flagg, Derek Queen, and himself. Liam McNeely is a perimeter small forward, 6'7"-ish, 6'6"-ish. Can fill it up, a crazy shooter. But he does not just shoot, so it's kind of throws you off a little bit in that sense. 24/7 report. First of all, I guess I should say he was committed in Indiana. He's a 2024 high school kid that decommitted fairly recently, originally from the DFW Metroplex, but now goes to Montverde, like I said, and really talented offensive player, great frame for defense, and again, deceptively large and long because he is such a traditional shooting guard type of game, but he's 6'7", long arms, and he can run and jump and do all the things. Liam McNeely didn't have Houston listed in his top whatever when he went and committed to Indiana, but 24/7's got Houston on a short list of people that have been back and forth with him already in his time since he decommitted. And I have to say that when I see Houston have so much trouble with like Momcilovic, or like projecting where Houston's going to have trouble in the tournament, having that like 6'7" wing, like true wing player, because Jaywan can cover it. Francis is so much better at covering now than he was. Emmanuel, frankly, plays bigger than he is, so he covers it up some. So did Terrence, and so does Ramon. But having someone just actually 6'7", 6'8" out there is a whole different ball game. And it feels like Liam could be that guy. Now, Liam's going to be a difference maker wherever he goes. I was just surprised to see Houston listed in the short list of schools that he's been in contact with back and forth, because Houston didn't make it very far in the recruiting process the first time. And so maybe he's having a change of heart. Maybe he wants to stay in Texas. Who knows what the deal there is? If you know, tell me in the comments down below. But I just feel like there's a reason Houston's suddenly in there, right? And it'd be a fun fit. He would not probably start next year, and that may be a problem for him as such a highly touted recruit. But I'd be interested to see where that thing went. Now, there's a lot more transfer news over the course of the offseason to talk about, and Houston will have some roster spots to rebuild with, and we'll see what that looks like, be tracking who goes where in it throughout the entire offseason. But right now, we're in March, and March is madness, March is chaos, and we're breaking down this weekend's games, hopefully plural, with the Longwood Lancers and the winner of Nebraska and Texas A&M on Friday and Sunday. Again, they got to win Friday to play Sunday. We're breaking that down all week long. We got people from Longwood to talk to, basketball film on them to break down, all kinds of stuff to get ready for March Madness to start, I guess, in full swing on Thursday, although Houston's not playing until Friday night. So hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know we're live, and make sure to make Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. Appreciate making us your first listen of the day today. Locked On Coogs is proud to make from the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team, our Coogs, are number one in the South. Coogs every day. Go Coogs.